So you've just had a baby and you're wondering when you can start exercising again. It's one of the most commonly asked questions I get as a Pilates instructor. So let's break it down together. So of course there is no one size fits all answer. When it comes to group classes, and I've run postnatal Pilates and exercise sessions for around 20 years now, generally I will always encourage women to wait for around 6 weeks, particularly if they haven't done any prenatal Pilates with me before. There are a couple of reasons for this. One is that if I don't know the individual and I'm about to place them in a group setting, it means I can be confident that when they come and join my class, they will be able to do the majority of the exercises that feature in the first 1 or 2 weeks of my course. But here in the UK, most women will be offered a GP checkup at around the 6 weeks post-birth mark. It gives me the confidence to know that they've been signed off by their medical professional and deemed to be safe to exercise. It just gives me that comfort, and also it's important for me for my insurance. Because whilst I'm an experienced Pilates instructor, I'm not a doctor. Now, of course, this might vary dependent on the type of birth you've had. So whether you've had a C-section, whether you've sustained some kind of trauma, you needed an episiotomy, or perhaps you had some kind of tearing or needed forceps. Some women, if they've got some kind of trauma, particularly in the pelvic floor area, I might recommend that they go and see a pelvic health specialist before they even come to class. That way I can collaborate with their pelvic health physiotherapist. Again, I'm a Pilates teacher, I'm not a physiotherapist. We work together and it just makes for better outcomes. I do feel generally that women just know when they feel ready to get out of the house, to take baby with them to a class. They feel even that they can get out of the house at a certain time and be somewhere at a certain time. That takes a certain degree of having recovered post-birth. There's also a lot of evidence that in that first 4 to 6 weeks post-birth, internal organs are adjusting. There is an increased risk of bleeding as well, because you will have recovered from some of the deepest wounds that a human body ever recovers from without surgery. Pregnancy and birth is magical. It's so much wonder involved in what your body does. So there's no need to rush it. In some cultures, you might even have a month where you stay at home and get looked after and rest. And so I think it's very, very important to respect that, to look after your body, and to feel that you only start exercising when you truly feel ready to do so. If in doubt, check with your GP or your midwife before you start exercising. But also we can have a conversation. If you want to start sooner and you feel ready to start sooner, talk to me. I've had ladies that have started a little bit sooner, and we've just talked through what they can or can't do and what feels safe or not safe to do. So why does postnatal Pilates specifically help when it comes to getting back to exercise? There are two real focuses: your core strength and that pelvic floor recovery. So it's very different to just popping on your trainers and going out for a run. We are focusing on something completely different, on that foundational strength, on that awareness of how your body has changed and what we need to do to get you back to feeling fitter and stronger again, in order that you might return to those types of exercises that perhaps you loved before you had a baby. I also find that lots of women just don't feel confident to start exercising again. They want someone to hold their hand, to tell them exactly what they can or can't do, to talk through the things that hurt, that don't feel right, and what exercise they can do to help with that. And that is where I come in. So that's important to me, that there is a space that you can come to where you can ask those questions. Please don't ever feel that by coming to a class, you should already be really good at Pilates. It is exactly the opposite. You would go and see a doctor if you felt unwell. You wouldn't necessarily go to the doctor if you felt healthy. And that's the same as coming to my postnatal Pilates class. You need to rebuild your body. There's an awareness that things have changed and you want to build that strength again. And that is where I come in. And that, I think, is why postnatal Pilates is safe a little bit earlier than other forms of exercise. Perhaps you're breastfeeding, or you're spending a lot of time holding a windy baby. You might feel your shoulders are stiff. We're going to help you out with that in Pilates. And you've spent up to 9 months growing a baby. You might feel that your back is stiff. You just need to move. Again, Pilates is brilliant for helping to mobilize your spine. If you've been someone that was working up until they went off on maternity leave, and now you're sat at home a lot, raising baby, lots of overwhelming feelings, you might be craving that community and that connection. And coming to a postnatal Pilates class, particularly ones where you can bring baby along, are so community focused. You'll meet like-minded women that also want to exercise and get out with their babies, and it's like you've got a ready-made bunch of friends. So let's just talk you through the common mistakes to avoid. So these are the sorts of things that I see happening a little bit in the postnatal period. Number one, if you've been a runner and you want to immediately jump into running again. Now, running is a brilliant form of exercise. There's a sort of freedom attached to it. But if you spend up to 9 months growing a baby and being pregnant and then having a baby and recovering postnatally, your body will be deconditioned. No matter how much exercise you did, there will be an element of deconditioning, and that can put you at risk of injuries. So I think it's really important that you start to build your core strength and your leg strength before you start running again. We do a lot of these sorts of exercises in my postnatal Pilates classes: held lunges, balance work, single leg work, to really start to feel that you build that strength again before you head out into the forest or onto the streets. Number two, women sometimes ignore those pelvic floor red flags, particularly if they like doing high intensity exercises. So little leaks or dribbles or that lack of control in your pelvic floor is not something to push past. It won't get better. And even if it does get better, there's a good chance that it might come back again at another time, because your body's rhythms fluctuate throughout the month or at different times of life. And it's super important that you don't ignore those red flags. Pilates can really help with pelvic floor trauma, as can going to see a pelvic health physiotherapist. So there's lots and lots of work that you can do. Don't be embarrassed about it. I have literally managed and helped with every type of pelvic floor trauma that I can know about or talk about. Nothing phases me. So ask me a question and we will see what we can do to help. And number three, it's comparing yourself to people that have just bounced back into their jeans or into their exercise or into the Reformer Pilates studio. You don't need to do that. This is your journey. Everyone is in a completely different set of situations and circumstances. And please don't ever feel that you need to compare your recovery to someone else's. So one of the reasons I initially set up my postnatal Pilates class back when my son was 4 months old, he's now 14 and just starting his GCSEs. But one of the reasons was because I felt it was important to have a space where people didn't need to worry about childcare, where women could come along and get the best advice they needed to transition from that postnatal period to perhaps going into more intense forms of exercise. And that's exactly why I created the class. So if you want some safe, structured guidance with a community of mums around you, then do get in touch and you can find out about my next course. And if you can't join us live or you're not local to me, there is an online version of my course. Do get in touch and I can share that with you. The link is in the descriptions, but please do get in touch and ask me any questions that you need, and good luck with getting back to exercise after a baby.